We need to play in a long game. It's not about reaching goals next year or a 5-year plan. We got to be with this the whole way. If we don't get this right, we're going to fail. I'd like to paint a broad picture of what the meaning of this contact is and some of its dimensions. It's a very big subject, and I will not be able to express everything that's important. But the things I will speak of are things that are really important in clarifying this picture and separating it from the tremendous amount of confusion and controversy around this subject, and perhaps give us a much clearer view, a much more direct understanding of who is here, why they're here, and how we should respond. Our contact represents the presence of foreign races from the universe, physical beings, physical races, who are interfering in our world, present in our world, and participating in our world in a way beyond our awareness or understanding, certainly here without our permission, and carrying on activities that have become more visible to us over time. In fact, millions of people around the world have witnessed these craft in our skies. And some people have had direct contact with these visitors themselves. So it is really an important and really big event. The forces that are here in our world are very small in number, but possess tremendously advanced technology. They do not represent a military force or have not demonstrated that in any way, but they definitely have their own agenda in being here. And something that is important for us to begin to discern, and we can begin to discern it not only from the evidence of their activities and the experiences of people who have experienced them, but also some things that we know ourselves innately about what visitation, or what I call in this case intervention, really means. Because in the whole history of humanity, we've had intervention, particularly advanced nations upon more primitive or native races. We certainly have a clear history of what that has been like. So we're now at a new threshold of understanding. And I think we have to realize that our human logic, even our human science, cannot really encompass the meaning and the reality of what we're experiencing now. The universe is not a human universe, certainly. And we are but a very small part of it. In fact, you could say the world that we live in, as beautiful and magnificent as it is only a grain of sand on a beach as far as the eye can see. That's how big this universe. But we're not dealing with the big, big universe. We're dealing with a local universe. Those who are aware of our existence, those who have an interest in our world or our future, those who are investing themselves in being here without our awareness or understanding. So this is what we have to face, and we have tools now to begin to face this and to prepare for it in an intelligent manner. We have to accept that this is not a visitation. We have not invited these forces here. They have not asked permission to be here. We have not set guidelines for them being here, as would be required of us as the host. They're working with and acting with impunity in our world. They're transgressing all the boundaries of nations and security and everything within countries and between countries. So they're here with their own agenda, and they don't seem to care what we think about it. So this is clearly an intervention. To try to make it a visitation is really to imbue it with our own values and interpretation, which really the reality of this does not demonstrate. So it is important for us to take a very cautionary approach now, and I'm going to take that approach, because that should always be the first approach to any kind of new reality that you're facing, particularly one for which you do not have an understanding, for which you do not have experience, which you can't really define for yourself very easily. So life is a cautionary process if it's undertaken wisely. And we certainly have to exercise this caution, which many people do not do. But we are the native peoples of this world facing intervention. We're facing foreign races who possess technology far beyond our own. This is not a fulfillment of our dreams. This is not a rescue mission from afar to save us from ourselves. There's no evidence to support that at all. So we should never assume that we are so important in the universe that other races will go out of their way to try to rescue or save us from ourselves. That is not the way we should approach this, particularly at the outset. It is a remote possibility, but the evidence of their presence here over many decades has not been supporting that in any kind of visible way.
So to go back to this intervention, why is it the perfect time? And really, what is this intervention and what is it here to do? Because I think that pairs obviously with the time that we're in the world.
Well, this is a very important question, and as we face a world now of declining resources, a heating planet, it's producing all kinds of problems for us on a large scale. The divisions between nations are now becoming more enhanced. We have a major war going on in the world currently, which is a very tragic situation. I mean, clearly, if you look at the history of intervention in our world between, say, European powers and native races, those powers were able to overcome much larger nations, partly because those larger nations were in internal conflict. And the intervening forces were able to take advantage of that conflict by recruiting natives, one of the opposing forces, to begin to undermine the existing power of, say, the Mayas and the Aztecs and things like this. So clearly, if we're in disarray, we're much more subject to intervention, and that intervention can express itself much more freely because we're so distracted with our own difficulties and problems, and we're not paying attention to the presence of other forces who are here to take advantage of that for their own benefit.
I'd like to back up a little bit. You talked about what you call the greater community, which I believe, and I understand to mean the universe at large. So can you talk about what is this greater community and what does intervention from that greater community mean?
Okay. Well, the word greater community doesn't imply unity or they're all one big family. It just encompasses the vast scope, in this case, of intelligent life in our local universe. We don't need to consider other dimensions at this point. We don't need to consider far reaches of the universe. We're having to deal with what's immediately around us and encountering life beyond our borders. But the rapid depletion of our resources is setting us now in train to become ever more unstable and to foment long-standing conflicts or disputes between nations. Certainly the competition for resources is the most fomenting thing for war there is. In fact, you could even say most wars are a competition for resources. Land, resources, all the things that are involved in that, because all nations need resources. And so we're in a very turbulent time in our world. It's going to become more turbulent. So intervention now recognizes this is a mineral-rich, biologically rich world, which is rare in the universe of barren planets. Worlds like ours are probably extremely rare and highly valued. The fact that we as a native race are destroying this world at a rapid rate, destroying its value, its resources, its diversity of life. I mean, the diversity of life is phenomenal, phenomenally important to other races too, for many, many reasons. And the rapid decline of our resources and the advent of nuclear weapons, those two things, has brought intervention here in its more mature phase, because the world has been visited throughout our history, but not like it's occurred since World War II. We're in a unique era of intervention now, and it has been unceasing since it got started in that great world conflict.
So Marshall, can you tell us then, what are these intervening races doing? What is the nature of their activity in the world?
They appear to have four fundamental activities of the intervention. The first is to establish a clandestine, active presence in the world. That means they're here. We may witness their craft. We may discern their presence, but we really have no access to who they are, what they're doing, how they communicate with each other, or how they move through the world. Their whole movement in the world is kept secret. The second part of their influence is to establish certain influence over certain leaders in the world in the area of governance, religion, and industry. Not all leaders, but certain leaders. And within that, to seek compliance and support from these leaders, promising them wealth, maybe world dominance, saying, we can give you everything you cannot give yourself. We can solve all your problems, and we can help you overcome your adversaries. And of course, this is important for industry leaders to become the dominant industry in the world, or religious leaders to become the dominant religion in the world. So this is all playing us against each other. This is a classic intervention thing of turning elements of society against one another. Divide and conquer strategy. The third one, which is really interesting and much more difficult to discern, is to influence religious thinking and impulses, particularly amongst people who are disaffected from establishing world religions, who are now seeking spiritual meaning, purpose, and value in other ways. And many of them have fallen under the influence, either directly or indirectly, of the intervention, to think the intervention itself is the religious force that is coming to the world to unite the world and to restore the true meaning of religion that it seems to have been lost amongst the discord and the conflict between existing traditions. And the fourth one, which is really hard to deal with, is taking individuals against their will off planet, subjecting them to very dangerous kinds of tests, and programming them to become advocates and supporters of the intervention. And you see this, the evidence of this everywhere. How people could be so believing in something that's never really proven itself to be of value for anything, but they're really committed. And there's no reason for them to be committed other than something that's happened to them internally that has fixated themselves on this foreign presence in the world that they believe is here to uplift us both materially, technologically, and spiritually. So this is active in the world today. It's the evidence of the intervention's impact upon individuals, because they need individuals to speak for them and to support them and to help them carry out their activities.
If I can interrupt briefly, I want to go back to something you just said, which is, I think you called it the classic strategy of intervention, which is this divide and conquer approach, which is very familiar to us in our own history. If you look at the history of colonization, of empire formation, this is what they do when they make contact with native peoples.
That's right.
I want to share this other passage from the same work called Entering the Greater Community. I think it speaks right to it.
Good.
Having lost faith in human leadership and institutions, people will look to other powers in the universe to guide them, believing fervently that a beneficial force will come here to restore and to save humanity from itself. It is this expectation, this desire, however unconscious it might be, that the intervention will utilize for its own purposes. And I wanted to bring this out because of this first statement about losing faith in human leadership and institutions, which seems to be just almost the story of the day. You know, division within countries, breakdown of democracies and democratic processes, just the wild spread of conspiracy theories almost about everything.
That's right.
And it seems almost strange that that is taking place, possibly alongside the arrival of advanced, intelligent, strategic forces who would use these very strategies of promoting division and distrust. So how do you view that today when you look out on the world? How do you view this pandemic of distrust, which is just almost everywhere, and the presence of this intervention?
Well, first of all, we're living in an age of pessimism, which is very different than, you could say, an age of optimism, which may have been a part of the former century, the latter part of the former century. But the intervention's power is influencing people's thinking and behavior, thus behavior. Its power is not conquering people by force. This is a primitive idea. We're still in a Star Wars mentality. That's not what's going on in the universe around us. The competition is for influence. And they can influence people who are vulnerable to their persuasion. And many people are making themselves very vulnerable to this, by the way. And there's a breakdown in trust in our traditions, our way of life, the value and integrity of our leadership, and it's polarizing people and groups within nations, between nations, and we're leading nations into almost intractable conflicts like we see in the war in Ukraine right now. Why is Russia committing itself to something that will ultimately destroy its economy and alienate itself from much of the rest of the world? See, there's something very strange going on now that's leading leaders to do very unwise and destructive things. So they will encourage our conflict between ourselves, but not to the detriment of the natural world. They want to preserve that because that is the value of the world. But they cannot live in our world. They cannot breathe our atmosphere. They can't even tolerate the biological diversity. They need us to work for them. They can't live here. They can't breathe our atmosphere. They can't tolerate the biological hazard of living in such a biologically diverse world, a world not their world. So they need us to work for them, to carry on their activities. It's manipulation. And many people are falling under its persuasion. And I understand why. I understand the nature of distrust. There's been a lot of failure in governance. There's been a lot of corruption in governance. I mean, of course, there's always been corruption in governance. But somehow this is now exploding this part of our reality into such a large specter that is dominating people's awareness and attention. And then conspiracy theories, in my opinion, are really largely fueled by the intervention itself. I mean, you think America is corrupt and should go live in other countries, should go visit other countries. I mean, yes, there are legitimate complaints, absolutely. But to think this is a conspiracy to take over the world by some cabal of industrial leaders, there's no evidence to support that.
Yeah, it seems like it's the extreme nature of those positions that people are taking. It's not that there isn't corruption, it's not that there aren't problems.
Absolutely.
But it's that you would not only give up on this country, but even propose civil war within this country, or turn against its fundamental institutions completely. That it's the extreme nature of people's response, which seems.
And that is the amplification that the intervention can bring to our pre-existing conflicts, discord, and lack of trust or discouragement. I mean, in the changing environments of the world with climate change and contraction of vital resources, I mean, it's leading people into financial crisis all over the world. It's going on everywhere right now. And so that creates a level of tension and disunity that's really big. I mean, so the intervention knows this. It knows we are creating this environmental condition for itself. It's probably happened countless of times in the universe. Where races do something destructive to their environment, and then living there becomes increasingly difficult, resources decline, and they have to seek engagement with other races in the universe, which probably is the end of their sovereignty as a world. There's many aspects of this, but I think we need to see that the environment is ripe for intervention. And the other reason it's ripe for intervention is we have created a basic technological foundation for a foreign race to use. This is why it didn't happen 100 years ago. This is why it didn't happen in ancient times. We are creating, mostly from our own means, but maybe with some of their assistance along the way, a technological foundation that they can utilize. We didn't do that for them, but it is a byproduct of what we've created for our own uses. But it can be useful to them. And that is another reason why intervention is going into a mature phase right now. Our world has been probably observed for centuries, but the potential for the kind of intervention that is being sought requires that we build a foundation for it. And it could bring resources from another world to build something here. They don't know how to build anything in our world. They don't even know how to use our world. So, and it sets up a dynamic that's going on behind the scenes and really in the dark. Obsessed with ourselves personally, obsessed with our ideas, obsessed with our conflicts, obsessed with world conflicts, declining economic situation, declining resource situation, very big things. Perfect time for intervention to come, to begin to work its process of disillusion in the world. Divide and conquer. They can do this without firing a shot. They have this mental skill to do this, and we become more vulnerable to this as we become more depressed, more anxious, more angry, more frustrated. So this is their window of opportunity. And I will say one thing about how governments are responding. The part of our government that knows about this is way secret, way deep. It's not your elected officials. It's not your president. It's not your Congress. Way deep. To respond to this intervention, try to create a technological response to it. This is not only a response to intervention, it's also a technological race. Whoever can claim and develop this technology will have dominance in the world. Technological dominance in the world. So that's a mighty big, two mighty big incentives for there to be a secret effort beyond human awareness to try to counteract the intervention, but also to gain its technology for our own purposes or any other country. And we have competitors in this. Surely we have competitors. So I want to bring that into view because this is why the government isn't telling you the truth, particularly certain parts of the military who have the most experience with this, are not willing to come forth and say what they know and what they see and what they're doing.
People may want a saving force or some sort of rescuing extraterrestrial presence, but that is not here. Is that correct?
That's right. Okay. And there's a reason that is not here. I mean, any freedom-loving nation would not intervene with humanity at a time of this kind of discord, because in order to help us, they'd have to take over the world. And no freedom-loving nation or race in the universe will do that, wouldn't even want to do that, but even would never achieve their goal of supporting human freedom and unity in the world. They'd literally have to take over the whole world. And so all a freedom-loving race can do is share with us their wisdom. Humanity, we need to share things with you you cannot see being on the surface of your world, that you need to know that you could not know otherwise. And that has been given to us, you know. And so we have to be prepared for something that we've never had to deal with before. And why this looks like the greatest challenge to humanity is also a great gift, because nothing else will unite the fractured nations and cultures of the world. Beyond all the history of conflict, history of grievance, competition for resources, there is something that can unite us, and only a threat from beyond can do that. Without that, we will decline into ever-growing competition, conflict, and war. That's the great risk. So there is an imperative to share about, for me to share this with you, for that reason as well. It's not just that we have a problem with intervention. It's that the problem of intervention itself is probably the only thing that can unite humanity, because everybody's at risk. No nation will benefit from this if the intervention is successful. No nation will prevail over another if the intervention is successful in gaining control of this world. We will become a client state of some foreign power over which we have no control. And you know, one other thing that we need to know about the universe is freedom is really rare there. Even the freedoms that we enjoy, parts of our world at least, very rare in the universe. That's another story I don't have time to go into at this point. But it is a factor here, because we are freedom-loving people, though we struggle to attain that freedom and maintain it. But that freedom is rare in the universe. And those who are intervening in the world today do not know this freedom, do not practice this freedom, and do not promote this freedom. What they tell the people they take, what they tell the people they capture, well, they'll tell them whatever they want to hear, the people want to hear. We're here to save you. We're here to rescue you. We're your spiritual seniors. We were in the world before you. We're coming back to reclaim. All these kind of narratives are being passed on to people who are captured. But it's all deception, every bit of it. So we have to become very sober about this. And this is very hard to face. This is very hard to deal with. But you have to start somewhere. And we have a deeper spiritual power within us that gives us the strength to face this and the ability to respond to it effectively within ourselves as individuals and collectively as we unite with other people to face this together. So If that were not the case, our story would be over. And there'd be no point in trying to rescue the human family in a universe such as we live in. But there is. There's a great promise. In fact, if humanity is to grow into a larger, united world of people who are competent and responsible and cautious regarding their interactions with the universe around them, then we're going to have to go through something like this. And that's why the first great challenge for us is a great challenge of this magnitude. So, yes, scary, yes, but think of the power of this to unite people beyond their existing conditions, if they're aware of it, if they see what is happening. So this is a great challenge. But you know, all great challenges start with poor odds. You know, nothing invented ever started out with any assurance of success. But this is pretty much a imperative, I think.
And, you know, also great challenge brings out greater things in us.
Absolutely.
People. And I know a large part of your work is about that, which I think is really interesting and worth going into. So we have this rather dark picture about intervention with these 4 activities that you mentioned, very covert, very behind the scenes, and very overwhelming probably for some of those listening. Like, oh my God, I've got to start thinking about this now when life is already pretty big for all of us. But there's also an opportunity here, and not just an opportunity maybe to unite as a world or to overcome differences, but an opportunity for individuals to respond in some other way. So where does this bigger issue and this rather dark reality, how does that come back home to us individually and the opportunity for us in all of this?
Well, we don't become great by accident, and we don't become wise by accident. And we have a greater strength within us that we maybe have experienced from time to time in terms of how it's guided us to do or not to do. But we have the power to protect the world from this intervention. They're a small force. They have no control over what happens on the ground. We manage the world. We can live in this world. And they can only, given the rules of intervention in our local universe, this is something that a gift given to me to understand. Conquest cannot be undertaken in a highly inhabited part of space in which we live. Who would ever know we're living in a highly inhabited part of space? Well, we don't know that. And so intervention has to be persuasive. It has to make us want it to be here. It has to make us agree to its presence. You see what I'm saying? It can't just take us by force. It doesn't have that force. It doesn't have that force. So it's our response to its presence and our response to each other in light of its presence that can make all the difference in bringing forth this greater strength and determination we all have, however undiscovered, however unexpressed it might be. It's there. So a large part of my work is restoring to people their power, integrity, and determination in life. And I don't mean power and determination to make money or to be a superstar in the world, but to have the strength to guide your life according to what you know to be true, and to recognize things in the world that you can serve, given who you are and what you have to give. Because the world has many, many needs and many different levels of service. Without this, the world will decline, and the outcome becomes ever more predictable as we go forward. So this is a big time to be in the world, but from my point of view, this is why you're here. I don't think there's any accident you're here without this greater context. That's part of your deeper nature, not your personal nature, not your desires and your hopes and your plans and what you prefer and what you don't like. This is much deeper. You have a deeper nature. It's not who you are. You're not some blind consumer out there just, dictated by commerce and politics. I mean, there is a deeper part of you. And this is what has to come forward in us as a core response to a challenge of this nature. In fact, it has to come forward from us to challenge all the challenges in the world. Or we'll just fight with each other endlessly. And the forces of dissonance are in the world. This is the intervention. It's not some spiritual, demonic thing. It is a physical force that's here with a purpose and a plan. So,
And yet you also say so often that it is a physical reality, but it has major spiritual implications or connections. And what are those then? For
well, the spiritual connections is to reach this deeper strength within us. We've been sent into the world to be at the world at this time under these conditions. So if you really want to know who you are, rather than just calling yourself a spiritual being or praying to a deity or a saint, then you have to come into connection with this deeper power and reality within you. That is our spirituality. This is spirituality beyond the level of religion and religious discord and religious contradiction or religious competition. This is our core spirituality. At the basis of all the world's religions is this spiritual emphasis. And its emphasis is on peace, is on restoration, is on forgiveness, and is on contribution. And the more you become engaged with this aspect of yourself, the more your personal life begins to clear up, the more you become free of addiction or free of habits of, destructive behavior. Your life begins to become strong, determined, and you feel inner direction. Because God is going to move you from the inside out. There's no spiritual force from the outside that's going to come in and make everything right. God works through us from the inside out. God redeems us and enables us to do things we wouldn't do otherwise. We'd all want to go to the beach and just stay there and be happy. But that's not why we came here. There's no fulfillment there. There's no satisfaction. There's no self-respect there. You're never going to be okay with yourself if you give yourself to things like that. So in a way, that the exigencies of our time are really redemptive if we can respond to them correctly.
Yeah, that's such an amazing and important perspective on contact, which is, I find, such a sullied topic, and it's both ridiculed and derided in the mainstream, and yet when you get into that topic matter, you find people who have cherished beliefs and wild views and notions about who's here.
Yeah.
And so to view this as an evolutionary event as a major opportunity to reconnect to our core being, I think is a very healthy and productive place to land with this topic, instead of to be a believer or to be a skeptic, to be enamored with it or to be aversive with it. And I know many people have that experience around this topic, unfortunately, when really this is an event of life. I mean, this is human evolution taking place. This is the next big thing, and it shouldn't be either hated or loved, wanted or denied. It is life happening. And and I think for those watching, you're probably watching because this topic means something to you. And I think what you're saying, Marshall, is it means something to this deeper part of you.
That's right.
And that part of you is responding.
And it's interesting when you say that many people who can respond to the things I'm saying are what I call greater community people. They have a natural inclination towards understanding space. Anything having to do with space attracts them. Maybe as children, they drew pictures of stars or spaceships, or anything with space has an attraction. There's something about space that speaks to them that doesn't speak to other people. And so for people who have this innate interest and orientation, I think this is important. I think this is a real clue as to who you are in the world at this time under these conditions. However we may view each other, we are one race in one world. And there's no one else like us out there, really like us. So that should be food for thought right there. If we don't bond together, we're going to lose this world. And we're going to lose it by forces that we barely even recognize. We think an intervening force is a grand armada of ships are going to come and just destroy the place. No, it's not how things work in the universe. Advanced races don't do that. That's why they're advanced. The power of persuasion. And we're in a very vulnerable place right now, culturally, economically, environmentally. People are very nervous. People are looking for answers. People are distressed. I mean, you can see it in the face of people everywhere you go. I mean, it's palpable. So we're bringing the lesson of life into a larger arena. And when you look at it like that, it's not quite so alien or foreign. It's just happening at a different scale.
And, for you people can look to their own past, what really got you unstuck, got you out of a situation or a dilemma or a poor position in life. Often it's a calling to rise above it in some way, to see it in a different light, a bigger light, to just depart it and do something else with your life that was calling to you. And so it's almost like, this is an opportunity for the whole human race to respond to something that has nothing to do with the neighboring country or the other people who wronged your ancestors long ago, and all the cascading levels of fixation and conflict, which we are mired in. I mean, you look at the world today, it is a quagmire of conflict.
That's right.
And so instead of climbing in and trying to rectify every conflict out there, this is another route. This is another way, is to respond to the presence of the universe beyond us, which reframes what it means to be a member of this human race. It reframes even your own sense of self.
That's right.
And so it's kind of deep and also and powerful in what it can do, even though it is overwhelming and very challenging. Marshall, in preparation for this conversation today, I went back to some of your earliest works, not the earliest, but one of the most important, being the book Preparing for the Greater Community. And, on the back cover of that book is a passage from the book itself, and it says something like, "Our world is emerging into a greater community of worlds, and for this we are unprepared." This is the preparation. And I think in many ways that kind of sums up the heart and essence of what brought your work into being. And I'm curious, how do you view that now? What is this emergence? What is this preparation? What's the essence of that process for the individual, especially?
Well, this has to begin with the individual. I mean, the divine reaches us individually and activates us individually. Many people are already been activated. They're feeling restless about being in the world. Something's happening. I don't know where we're going. I'm unsettled. I'm uncomfortable. And I see this as a sign of being stirred by something greater and innate within us. And it's uncomfortable, but it's also important, because if you're just blindly going through life thinking everything is fine or it's not my problem, you're checked out. You're not being intelligent, and you're not responding to your environment. And so I think the power to hold a challenging focus is really strengthening. You don't have answers. You don't know how it's going to work. Nobody at the beginning of something big knows how it's going to work. Nobody's assured of success. That's ridiculous. You have to go into life willing to participate in life and learn how to be in life. And we are in the process of emerging out of isolation in the universe. We're never going to have it again. Even if we were to overcome this wave of intervention, there'll be others. And a free nation does not exist easily amongst larger nations that are not free. You see that in our own world. Free nations are under a lot of pressure from nations that are not free. So I think this is our moment. And it's not just a moment, because we need to play in a long game. It's not about reaching goals next year or a 5-year plan. We got to be with this the whole way. We're going to give our children a world of utter desperation and tragedy. And if you have kids, I'm telling you, I'm sure you're already concerned about that to some degree, probably. So this is a time for us to become alert, aware, and be able to connect with others who are now becoming alert and aware naturally. I mean, this is just a network, a knowledge network, if you will, of people who are responding to this and are being able to see it clearly for what it is. I've been on many radio interviews where all the speculation about the presence is all it could be and should be, and it's connected to this and it's connected to that. And I've said to some of my hosts, I said, "Sir, can't you just see this for what it is?" And they're dumbfounded. Because their whole game is about creating diversity of opinion and keeping this a mystery and having it be what everybody thinks it could be and where everybody's got an opinion, rather than, can I just see this and know this for what it is? Yeah, behavior of the intervention absolutely tells you it's an intervention. Its activities tell you it's destructive to humanity.
And yet, of course, the simple truth is often the hardest, right? Because when the truth is simple, then you have to act.
You have to do something.
And often in life, life has a lot of complexity, but its overall movement, you could say, is simple. The problem, though, is that all of a sudden you find yourself an actor on that stage.
Yeah.
And do you really want to be an actor on that stage?
Simple is difficult.
Right.
You know, people sometimes get together and talk about these things and kind of get jazzed up on, you know, alien presence in the world and what it could mean and what it could do. But they're just sitting in the audience. They're not paying attention. They're not asking the critical questions. What is I need to know about this? This is not so complex. This is an act of nature. We've been through it countless times in this world. Can't I just see this and know this for what it is? Doesn't mean you can understand it or understand what it's doing. No, just what is it? If we have an intruder in our house, that's an intruder.
That's a simple truth, demanding
Right.
immediate action.
Doesn't mean you know who the intruder is, why they're there, what they're going to do. I have an intruder in my house.
You know, our first live stream a few weeks, actually a couple months ago, was on the topic of why the world needs you. And I flash back to that topic because this is why. You know, this topic of such a simple truth about contact, the intervention, but such a challenging truth.
Right.
And why does the world need you? This is why the
Right.
world needs you, because who is responding to this?
Right. That's right.
Well, and actually, many people are responding. You could say hundreds of millions, but at a level beneath their conscious awareness.
Mhm.
They're responding at the level of, you could say, knowledge or spirit. Like their being is responding,
Mhm.
because their being is connected to the future of the world. This is the future of the world, is to emerge into this universe of life. And also their being holds purpose. And purpose is action in service to real needs. This is, you could say, needs in the world.
Right.
Many issues that are worth supporting, and this is the one behind all of them
Yeah.
that absolutely has to be.
Well, if this isn't resolved, everything else we do in service to the world will probably fail in the future at some point. So the intervention is sowing seeds of discontent and dissension and opposition within our cultures, within the minds of many people. It's trying to convince people it and nothing else will save us from our dilemmas, and that it has this key to our spiritual fulfillment and to our future success. It's a great narrative. They're not doing anything to demonstrate that, but that's what people want to hear. So this is a wake-up call, and it's not an easy one. And I respect anybody who can even begin to walk around this. I'm not asking you to believe everything I'm saying, but I am asking you, no matter what your viewpoint is on this subject, even if you have a viewpoint, to walk around this and consider the things I'm saying today. If we don't get this right, we're going to fail. This is the biggest thing happening in the world today, but it's off most people's screens. The government, the part of the government that knows about it isn't talking, and everybody are all over the place about how they, if they're aware of it at all, how they understand it or try to tie it into their religious beliefs or their social ideas. But this has really power of redemption if you can respond. You can live without answers, because when you have a higher purpose in life, it's not a higher purpose of having answers. It's a higher purpose that sets a direction in your life, and you follow that direction, and things begin to come together for you. Not because you have some great answers. Answers are nothing. You know, life is about movement. It's about action. It's about what you do and why you do it. And your good ideas are like water under the bridge, you know. So I bring challenge. I bring purpose. I bring the possibility of real redemption and greater unity in sharing this with you, and perhaps through you to others as well.